Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Mike. Today we have a ton to cover, starting with college football week 3 recap. We are going to talk about most of the big games here from week 3 in college football, give some outlook, looking at the poll that just came out, and much more. We're also going to talk about Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football of week 2 of the NFL, which we didn't get to talk about in our recap. But if you want to catch all the other games from week 2 recapped, that is in our last episode. You can go check that out. And then we will end the episode with previewing all the games coming up here for the NFL in week 3 and giving you some of our best bets. So, Mike, do you want to start us off with some college football?
Yeah, I'll start off with some college football here. Some quick games to go through. Absolute barn burners, very close. Tennessee versus Kent State.
Yeah.
Kent State had them right where they want them all game, but couldn't get it done in the end. They lost 71 to nothing. Ball State looked phenomenal in the first half, a little bit better in the second half. They lost 62 to nothing to Miami. And then Purdue Notre Dame, absolute electric game, electric environment. Notre Dame wins 66 to 7. Yeah, not much to say there. But on to games that actually mattered. Friday night, Kansas State versus Arizona in a top 25 matchup. I expected Arizona to come in this game and have a solid offensive game. That did not happen. Kansas State dominated them on both sides of the ball. Noah Fafita couldn't get much going passing. Does not finish with a touchdown passing. Uh, T Mac, what they call him, still has another great game, 11 catches for 138 yards. But the story of the game was just Kansas State. Their defense was phenomenal. Offensively, Avery Johnson was passing the ball great, and he was phenomenal on the ground, had 110 yards rushing. Whenever your quarterback can do that, it's usually pretty scary. He has about 260 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So nice win for Kansas State there, and that's a big win for them. Top 25 game. Next game here, Alabama, Wisconsin. A lot of hype going into this game. Big Ten SEC. Wisconsin looked solid early. Tyler Van Dyke was moving down the field pretty well. He was 5 for 5. Gets hurt. I can't even remember what the injury is, but he's out for the rest of the game. They have to bring in their backup, Braden Locke, and he really just could not go against that very good SEC Alabama defense. And Wisconsin offensively, they couldn't really run the ball. They haven't been able to run it too well this year, and they couldn't pass it. They only get 10 points, and Alabama pulls away, dominates the rest of the game. Jalen Milroe was good in the air, good on the ground. He had 5 total touchdowns, almost 200 yards passing. He got the ball to his guys. His freshman, Ryan Williams, 78 yards and a touchdown. Nice one for Alabama against a good Big Ten team that is going to need their quarterback back. Next game here, I'll say what I have to say about this game, then I'll send it to you. Georgia, Kentucky, close game, 13 to 12. Kentucky had their chances. They had a fourth and what was it, like two, maybe a little bit more than that, but at about the 50-yard line, should have went for it. Instead, they decided to punt and try to maybe keep field position. I don't know. Just not a smart decision at all. And Georgia's really able to run the clock out for pretty much most of the clock. Kentucky had them where they want them in this game. The game was in Kentucky. Kentucky always plays Georgia close. One of Georgia's hardest games every time they have to play them. Carson Beck wasn't great, only 160 yards passing. Trevor Etienne on the ground was all right, 79 yards on 19 carries, but really it was just a defensive battle. And in the end, Georgia was able to just pull away and win by a singular point.
Yeah, Kentucky always plays well against Georgia, but they can never beat them, at least in the current era. They always hold them to a low amount of points, and their offense isn't able to get it done. Kentucky's game in week 1 got canceled because of lightning, and they are yet to score a touchdown since that. So there may be some sort of curse that came from that storm, but they did not score a touchdown against South Carolina, and they did not score one against Georgia here. Very disappointing when you're at home and you're playing against the number 1 team in the nation and you're coming off a horrible loss at home the week before. You have a chance to go for it on 4th down, put yourself in a position to win the game. And instead, I know your defense was great all game long, but you choose to trust your defense, and Georgia just runs it out because they are the number 1 team in the country. Just very, very disappointing stuff. There's a chance we're coming to the end of the Mark Stoops era here at Kentucky. It kind of seems like the writing is on the wall, but they played great in this game, but got to be able to score touchdowns, especially in college football. Moving back a little bit, though, you said K-State, Arizona. K-State dominated this game, especially on defense. A lot of impressive stuff we're seeing from the defenses here in the new Big 12. The Big 12 was notoriously a horrible defensive conference. Some of the best teams, though, K-State current Big 12 defense looked good. Oklahoma former Big 12 defense going into the SEC, they look good on defense. Very interesting to see some of the changes there in the Big 12. Alabama, Wisconsin, like you said, Van Dyke gets hurt, and that really kills Wisconsin here. But I think it's very encouraging to see Kalen DeBoer as the first in his first year at Alabama be able to go into a tough environment. Wisconsin get the win regardless. Of course, they got to play a team that was a little bit handicapped, but they still looked great offensively. Like you said, Milrow had 5 touchdowns. He's looking to be in Heisman contention, and Bama starts the season 3-0, despite having the greatest coach of all time leave in the offseason. Couple teams cruise, like you said, Tennessee 71 nothing. Crazy. They only score 6 points in the second half of that game too, but they continue, of course, to shut Kent State out. Ole Miss cruises past Wake Forest, a Wake Forest team that a lot of people thought could be a solid team going into the year here, maybe one of the better teams in the ACC. And Ole Miss dominant at Wake Forest, 40-6. Great game from them. Oregon, we see a bounce back from them. Oregon State looks scrappy early on in the year, 2-0 in their first 2 games. They get a home game here versus a rival in Oregon. You expect them to be able to compete in this game, and they did in the first half. They were winning at one point. They went into the second half only down 8 points, but they get shut out in the second half. Oregon outscores them 27 nothing in the second half, and Oregon has their best win of the year against arguably the best team they played. Maybe not Boise State, but regardless, another team, Miami, cruises in this one, 62 to nothing over Ball State. Oklahoma played Tulane, a Tulane team that gave, who was it? K-State? Who did they give trouble to last week in week 2? I forget. I believe it was K-State. But Oklahoma does a decent job in this one.
K-State.
They don't have a great second half, but regardless, they still get the win by 15 points, 2 scores over Tulane. LSU in a game that went down to the wire at South Carolina, a South Carolina team that was great defensively in the first 2 games against Kentucky and against, I forget who they played in week 1, but they had a great first 2 defensive games. They play LSU, a great offensive team. LSU able to put up 36 on them, but South Carolina's offense was able to keep them in this game. They have a chance for a late game tying field goal. They miss it, but very, very competitive. South Carolina, I think, is going to end up looking like a lot better team than people expect, which does give some credit to Kentucky, who's they are sitting at 1-2, but their 2 losses are going to be to Georgia and South Carolina, 2 games that they probably should have won, to be honest, but that's how college football goes. A few more here. We see, like you said, Notre Dame blows out Purdue. Michigan, a team that we had a lot of question marks going into the season. Are they going to be able to do anything offensively? They lose big to Texas in week 2, and then they win by only 10 points at home. They lose the second half by 8 points against Arkansas State. Arkansas State was 2-0 going into this game, but Michigan is not nearly as impressive as the AP voters thought going into the season, and they're going to have to step it up if they want to make the playoff.
Yeah. Boston College team we've talked about a lot in recent episodes. They play Missouri. Big game for them to maybe prove that they are one of the top teams, maybe a playoff contender. They fall short in this one. The SEC continues to roll. Thomas Castellanos, he was okay. Just the turnovers got the best of him. 2 interceptions, 250 yards and 3 touchdowns for him. They couldn't really run the ball. They were forced to pass. Unfortunate for them. And Brady Cook just did what he had to do. And Missouri, good defense. They're a good team. They're a team you really don't want to play. They're going to be tough to beat this year. Next game, LSU, South Carolina, like you said. South Carolina had this game, and we see LSU kind of come back and win one after the last couple weeks. They've struggled to do that. Neusmeyer was solid. They were able to run the ball. It's just South Carolina really close. Ran the ball phenomenally. Just couldn't get it done. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about I don't know if you'd call it the debut or whatever, of Arch Manning. 5 total touchdowns. He had a massive 67-yard rushing touchdown. Had 223 yards in the air. Was 9 for 12. Absolutely dominated UTSA. He looked great. Quinn Ewers did go down with an injury. I don't know if he's expected to miss any time, but he was playing solid going into that moment. And Arch Manning, it might be Arch Manning's season. I saw his Heisman odds absolutely.
They shot up.
They shot up. He's like plus 1,000 now. He was like plus 50. I
Plus
don't
a
know.
thousand is crazy. So
I
Texas
can't
has
remember.
2 quarterbacks in the top,
Yes,
probably 10 of Heisman. That's crazy. That-
people
That's
want to bet
wild.
on him.
I mean, I don't blame him. I don't think that's gonna work out for him. But Texas, Does move to the number one team in the country this week in the new AP poll. We don't see much movement inside of the top 10. You see Miami go up a couple spots, a couple SEC teams trade spots. Tennessee hops Mizzou, and Georgia drops to two, and Texas moves up to one. But we still have one, two, four, five, six, and seven in the top 10 are SEC teams. They've just been dominant to start the year. They started high in the polls, but regardless, a lot of these teams, most of these teams have lived up to their potential fully.
Yeah,
We don't see much movement in the polls at all, really, to be honest. We see Northern Illinois move themselves up to 23 now. Illinois moves up into the rankings. Texas A&M back after losing to Notre Dame week 1. They bounce back, get a couple wins, move to 2-1, get themselves back in the poll, but not a ton of movement this week. We've seen Notre Dame go up a little bit after beating Purdue by so much, and K-State shockingly only moves up one spot here after being a good Arizona team. They only move up to 13. But from what I saw from K-State on Friday night, I do expect them to move up. I think they're going to be one of the better teams, especially in the Big 12 this year.
I agree. I think they're very good. And Arch Manning on the other side, UTSA's quarterback was Owen McCown, Josh McCown's son. So kind of funny
Really?
matchup between the Manning and McCown family there. But I
Oh, I
do have
didn't
the
know that.
Heisman odds here now, and Ashton Genty did fall sadly, but Arch Manning plus 2,000, Quinn Ewers plus 2,000.
Wow.
Um,
I
I
was about to
don't
say
know.
plus 1,000 felt crazy. Plus
I
a
think
thousand felt
he
crazy.
was plus, I think 9,900. So he's flew all the way up to 2,000. Cam Ward is the favorite right
Where
now.
does that put them at, like in the
One, two,
rankings?
three, four, five, six. Tied for seventh.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Two in the top seven at the same position is crazy at a
Yeah.
singular. That's wild.
And that's just that. I mean, there's like no shot Arch Manning wins it.
I mean, there's not no shot he wins it.
I don't see
Texas is the number one
them.
team in the country. If they decide to rock with him,
I don't see them rocking with him over Quinn Ewers though.
the way this Texas offense is run and the way they're playing, just overall, assuming they stay at the top here, whoever is playing quarterback for them is most likely going to win that. So
I
if it
agree.
is
I just don't
Arch,
think that they would do Quinn Ewers like that.
I don't think so either. But
Quinn Ewers is questionable this week against they play Louisiana Monroe.
he hasn't missed a ton of games. But Quinn Ewers has been injury prone in his career. We've seen it.
Yeah,
He's gotten hurt. I mean, he's played through a lot of injuries, but he still gets them.
that's gonna be interesting. There's Travis Hunter's there. Avery Johnson, he deserves to be there. He's up there now as well.
You think they would give Travis Hunter the Heisman even if Colorado was
I
horrible?
don't think they should at all, but he's there.
Yeah, I mean, if he had like Devontae Smith stats,
He'd have to have Devon. I mean, I think he'd need more than that because Devontae Smith was still in the best team in the country.
yeah, true, exactly. But how much do you attribute winning for a position that's wide receiver compared to quarterback? I think there's a lot of play there, but I would be
Him and
shocked if he won it.
him and
Truly.
Ashton Genty are the only two non-quarterbacks on the list. So
Interesting. All right. That I think about does it here for our week 3 college football recap, unless you got anything else.
that's all I got.
All right, so we will move on to talking about the two games we did not talk about in the NFL for week 2, starting with Sunday Night Football. The Texans beat the Bears 19-13 in this one. Story of the game, and we'll talk about it a little later when we do our week 3 preview, but the Bears still not able to pass it well. Caleb Williams does get over the 100-yard mark. Congratulations to him for that. He gets to 174 in this one, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, and sacked 7 times in this one. He was just the Bears O-line. I mean, we both said it in the preview as much as you want to say, and we both did say this may be the best situation a rookie quarterback has ever entered in. I mean, a number one pick has ever entered in, and it very well still could be. They have a phenomenal. The reasons we said this was they have a phenomenal defense and he has great weapons. That still remains true. That part hasn't changed. And another part that hasn't changed is the O-line concerns are there and they have been and they're going to continue to be. As much as Bears fans want to convince you that this O-line is better and that every year they get better and you think they're going to have protection going into the year, they just don't. This O-line is not great and it's going to continue to hurt Caleb Williams. We saw it on Sunday night. They were still in this game though. Phenomenal defensive performance from the Bears. Their defense is truly locked in. They're great on the ground. They did a solid job of stopping CJ Stroud. They were not amazing at it, but nobody is. He again doesn't throw any picks in this one. He's just truly, I don't want to say he's the perfect quarterback, but he just never ever makes big mistakes, and that's always going to keep your team in games. Texans defense, They were not phenomenal in week one against the Colts, but they also gave up a lot of their yards and points on big plays. If they didn't, of course, they didn't give up a lot of big plays in this one. The Bears had none. But regardless, the Bears have to be able to run the ball better, especially when they play the Colts next week. They need to be able to run the ball better. We'll talk about that one in a bit, but they have 22 carries for 71 here, and their leading rusher was Caleb Williams. As much as I love DeAndre Swift, I have to mention he went 14 carries for 18 yards, which is just
Yeah.
a very, very tough look for him. Of course, Keenan Allen did miss this game. DJ Moore was the leading receiver. But yeah, the story of this game is the Bears O line, really. I mean, they're just not a good unit at all. It's going to significantly hinder Caleb Williams' ability. If I'm a Bears fan, I would rather go into this year if I could choose to wipe out all these great weapons that he has and give him a solid O line. I would do that. It's more important, in my opinion, for a rookie quarterback to have a good O line and good protection than it is to have flashy weapons. The great defense is just a plus. That's the biggest advantage of what the situation Caleb Williams is entering in, because most of the time a number one pick is not going to have a great defense off rip. He still has that. He still has his great weapons, although they're hurt and we don't know what we're getting out of Keenan Allen all the way yet. And Roma Dudze does almost catch a touchdown in this one, just misses it. But regardless, the O line's a significant problem for the Bears. I'm impressed by both of these defenses, and CJ Stroud is CJ Stroud.
Yeah, the run game for the Bears has not been good at all. That was one thing I was slightly worried about going into the season. We've seen DeAndre Swift. He was on the Lions, who had a phenomenal O line, and he got kind of shunned out there. Goes to the Eagles. He didn't have the best season last year. Put up, I think, 1,000+ yards, but
He got shunned out because he couldn't stay on the field in Detroit. He was good. He just
I've
couldn't
I've
get on,
never
couldn't stay on the field.
I don't know. I've always wanted to believe in DeAndre Swift, but every time I feel like I do, he just always lets me down. It's kind of how I feel about him. Um, Caleb Williams wasn't phenomenal in this game, was under pressure a lot, so you can't really blame him for that. Danielle Hunter was phenomenal. Will Anderson was great. They're two new defensive edge duo there of two guys, older and younger, dominate. And that's just going to continue all season. Darnell Wright had a couple of plays where he looked rough. He was supposed to be one of the big pieces on this Bears O line. Not great. Tevin Jenkins has struggled a lot. Lucas Patrick's been fine, but Braxton Jones too, not great. They need to figure this out. They're lucky that they get to go against a Colts D line next week that's a little banged up. Receiving wise for the Bears, DJ Moore looks a little upset on the sideline. Maybe not too happy. He was a big Justin Fields supporter, and Justin Fields isn't there anymore. Maybe he's a little upset. But for the Texans, CJ Stroud just finds ways to win games. That's what he does. They didn't really have a run game in this one. Probably shows how bad the Colts run defense is, considering how they dominated with that last week. Joe Mixon did get hurt on a hip drop tackle that he was very upset that wasn't called, but he seems to be okay. I think he'll be ready to go next week. And Nico Collins, man, just continues to just be a absolute weapon for the Texans. And CJ Stroud, he had 8 catches, 135 yards, and a touchdown. The Bears could not guard him. He is the alpha receiver in this receiving room. He's getting a lot of comparisons to Andre Johnson for him, and I can kind of see it. He's a big guy. It's hard to bring down. He's almost like a tight end slash receiver build. He's phenomenal. Stephon Diggs was upset with his role in the Bills offense. He's gonna have a smaller role here in this Texans offense with Nico Collins. So the Texans, they're just gonna continue to win games like this, and CJ Stroud, no turnovers. And if their defense can continue to play like this, they're gonna be very good.
You could feel the Bears fans are a little bit on tilt right now. You could feel it.
Yeah.
There's something in the air. If I mean we'll talk about it, but he has a golden opportunity next week, and my God, if the Colts defense shuts him down, I am going to have a field day.
Yeah.
But
I'd be shocked.
we will get to that when we get to it. Before we start the preview, though, last game to recap here: Monday Night Football. Kirk Cousins wins on Monday night, 22-21 over the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is just, I mean, what a collapse from the Eagles defense. I love Darius Slay as a Lions fan. He was a big part of my life for a long time. He was the best player on the Lions, especially defensively, for a long time. And man, I believe it's over. I believe it's officially over for Darius Slay. That last route that Drake London, right? And I mean, all the credit to Drake London. That was a beautiful route. He completely coached Darius Slay, but that was just embarrassing. Slay had just no chance on that route. The Eagles just Swiss cheese secondary got ripped apart on this last drive. And honestly, they played, I mean, they weren't great for most of this game, I will say that, but they played fine against a team that has a ton of offensive talent. They played fine in the first half and has a great O line. We see the Falcons focus more on getting the ball to Bijan in this game and letting him get carries. We see it pay off. He goes 14 for 97. Saquon Barkley, he had a good game. He almost had a touchdown, but that drop on fourth down or on third down killed them in this one. It led to the field goal, which led to the Falcons an 80-yard drive to win this one late. Saquon cannot drop that ball. He knows that, and that's just a problem for them. The Eagles through the air were what we kind of expect from the Eagles through the air. They're going to have success at times. Jalen Hurts is going to make some bad throws and make some bad plays at times. They didn't have AJ Brown in this one. That definitely hurts them. I think you have to take that into consideration. I don't know his status for next week, but for the Falcons, we see Kirk have a much better game. He goes 20 for 29 in this one, 241, two touchdowns. Of course, that was heavily inflated by that last drive there, but regardless, he has a solid game. Drake London gets 6 catches for 54, and like I said, he gets in there on that beautiful route at the end. He was great. Darnell Mooney makes a huge play for them, and I don't even remember what point of the game that was. That might have been I think that was in the second half, but he has a huge touchdown for them. It was just funny to see. I was like, who the hell's that? And sure enough, Darnell Mooney
Money with
comes
two
up.
O's.
Yeah, yeah, money with two O's comes through for the Falcons. But I was shocked to see the Falcons win this game. It kind of felt like the Eagles were in control for most of it, even when they weren't winning by a ton. It felt like they were in control for most of it. I think this is just a you could put most of the blame on this loss on the um secondary of the Eagles. I mean, that last drive itself was just worthless. The Eagles do get the ball back late in this game with timeouts and not much time to go. And we see Jesse Bates make a great play on a horrible Jalen Hurts throw. Jesse Bates just continues to be dominant in his time in Atlanta. He's been great. This Atlanta defense as a whole, I think, is really good. They've looked good through 2 weeks, although they're 1-1. The offense, I still think can use improvement. They should have been able to do what they did on that last drive for a lot of the game. They weren't able to do that for a lot of the game. I expect more from the Falcons offense, but their defense has been elite so far this season, and that's something that you can never take for granted. Look at the Eagles.
Yeah, Eagles defense rough again. Secondary wasn't great at all. I put a lot of this blame on just the coaching staff in general. You had a lot of chances I mean, you had a field goal earlier that you decided to pass on, and then just kind of the management of the clock late. I don't know. I think Nick Sirianni could have done better. Jalen Hurts was okay in this one, 183 yards and a touchdown, has the interception late that really hurts him. He did have 85 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown, so kind of just a classic Jalen Hurts performance there. Saquon Barkley gets a lot of touches. I think he had 26 total touches in this game. He was great, and the one touch he didn't get was the drop, and that one is the one that ended up killing them in the end. Devontae Smith has his first game as kind of their alpha receiver with no AJ Brown, who he is expected to be out. I guess he told Lisa Salters he expects to be out a couple of weeks, which is very unfortunate for an injury that you pick up in a practice. That sucks. But for the Falcons, this was a game you kind of needed to have, or you wanted to have, considering you lost last week to the Steelers in a game you wanted to win. But they find a way to win this one. Bijan gets the ball a lot. I think Bijan and Saquon combined for 40 total touches in this game. Nice to see the running backs getting the ball. But Kirk Cousins doesn't have his best game, but on that late drive, finds I think Mooney twice, gets Drake London in the end zone. Ray McLeod has been pretty good for them as a receiver. Only 3 catches in this one, but 42 yards. He was solid, and defensively, they looked pretty solid. Matthew Judon had a sack, a couple tackles for loss. That was a big addition for them. And their secondary is looking very good with AJ Terrell back there, Jesse Bates, and the addition of Justin Simmons as well. So this Falcons team, if they can just keep it together and keep playing like that, they can win a lot of games, and it could be a three-way battle for the NFC South.
Yeah, I'm not like panicking about the Eagles or anything as hard as I've been on them. I think they are in a similar situation to like the Lions this week, who you're two teams with high expectations playing in games that although you're playing against a good team, because the Bucks and the Panthers, I do believe, are two good teams, you're at home, you're in a game that you should win, and you just don't perform to your ability. You make a couple crucial mistakes and lose it, but it's only week two. I'm not too concerned about the Eagles going forward, but the secondary has to improve. And even if that means benching Slay, that means benching Slay. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah, I think the secondary will improve as the season goes on. You got a
Has to.
couple. I mean, you look at their schedule, they got some easy games coming up. They get to play the Commanders twice. That'll be good for them.
Yep.
They play
And the Giants.
Carolina this year. Yeah.
Those four games will, I mean, those got to be four wins, but knowing them, they'll probably drop one to the Commanders, I bet.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Somehow, Jaden Daniels has the best game of his life.
Yeah. But let's move on here to the week 3 preview of the NFL. We got 16 games here to go over. We will start with Thursday night football. Patriots at Jets. Jets are in a good spot to win some games early on here, but the Patriots are a scrappy team. Jets have not been able to run the ball early. They just have 84 yards rushing per game so far to start the season. I've said that they really need to get this rushing game going. The stats back it up. They've only had 84 per game. The Patriots do have the second best run defense so far in the league at just 58 yards per game. So we definitely could see the Jets struggle to run the ball again, which is something that we desperately need them to improve on for them to truly unlock their potential. I'm going to keep saying that. There's a lot of teams here who I feel need to figure out how to run the ball to unlock their potential. The Jets are one of them. I'll talk about a few more here later. But they absolutely have to figure that out. I don't think they will in this one, but they have a good enough passing offense to probably get by. Jets defense is just so good overall, too. Brissett and the Pats should just really struggle to score in this game. And I think the Jets have enough offensive talent to be able to put enough points up to win this one. It should be a good game for Rodgers, too, against a weak pass defense. Like I said, though, this Pats defense is scrappy and they're good in the run game, which will force Rodgers to do a lot more than he wants to do, which could lead to some mistakes, but he's a veteran. I don't think that will happen. This needs to be a statement game for the Jets. The Jets need to go out there and win this game by double digits. I think they do that. Give me Jets minus 6.5, although I am worried about the run game.
Yeah, the run game for the Patriots has been surprisingly very good so far this year. Uh, they're towards the top. They're averaging 177 and a half total rushing yards per game. Because of that, they haven't had to pass the ball with Brissett as much, but this might be a game where the Jets defense does force them to do it. The Jets defense is facing a decent amount of injuries. I couldn't remember if CJ Mosley, if he's expected to play or not.
I'm not sure.
Because they did do Jermaine Johnson for the season. I
Yes,
know we mentioned that on the
ruptured
recap
Achilles. Yep.
with the torn Achilles.
Is there a difference between a tear and a rupture for Achilles? I feel like those are kind of used interchangeably. I'd
Yeah,
imagine there's a difference, but they're both bad.
yeah, it looks like they're keeping it close to their chest. So we won't know if Mosley plays, but that is going to be a big key factor for the Jets to try to slow down the Patriots' run game. I think I would like to lean towards the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. They have Brees Hall. They kind of seem to figure out their offense a little bit. Looks like they're going to kind of do a duo in the backfield with Braylon Allen, the rookie out of Wisconsin, and Brees Hall. But 6.5 is a lot of points. We did get burned with a lot of favorites last week, so maybe it's time to switch it up. But I think I'm still going to lean Jets minus 6.5. Rodgers gets his first home game here at MetLife. Hopefully, he doesn't tear his Achilles in this one. Gets the New York crowd going. So I'm going to go Jets minus 6.5.
All right, starting out the Sunday slate here with the first game, Broncos at Bucks. Bucks coming off a huge win against the Lions, like I just mentioned here earlier. Despite a bad secondary and a lot of injuries, though, they've been a pretty solid unit defensively in the past game through 2 weeks. Of course, they did play against the Commanders week 1, but regardless, they were solid against Jared Goff despite giving up a ton of yards. They were able to force turnovers. They were able to be phenomenal in the red zone. I think that continues for them, and that's a huge strength if they can continue that. The only weakness for the Bucks so far in this year has been their run game. Denver's running offense has not been great though, so I expect them to their Denver's running defense has not been great so far. So I hope that the Bucks can have some success on the ground. I don't know what the state of Rashad White is right now. I know he got hurt.
I think
He
he
hurt his
should still be good
groin.
to go, I
He
think.
is, yeah, I'm seeing right now. Should be good. Okay, cool. So that's good for them. That's a big loss they would have had to get over. But regardless, I think they're going to have a much better run game here. Broncos pass defense has been shockingly good so far for them. We will see if they have any success versus a great pass game. I don't think they're going to have success. I think the fact that they played the Steelers is a big reason why they've had such good pass defense so far. Denver's offense as a whole just really scares me. Maybe they can capitalize on a beat up Bucks defense, but I just don't think that's the case. I also don't know. Do we know the status on Vita Vea? He's day to day. So I'm assuming he's probably going to play in this one. Maybe he doesn't because they're playing the Broncos, but Todd Bowles is really becoming a really good head coach when people thought he might not have been.
Yeah.
he comes into games and I mean, we saw his coaching won them that game last week against the Lions. So I think they take care of Denver at home and move to 3-0. Give me the Bucks -6.5.
Before I start this one, I am going to go back. I'm going to change my bet to Patriots +6.5. I
Okay.
just want that to be known. The Patriots 2-0 against the spread so far this season. I've got burned by them twice. Maybe I get burned by them a third time though here and they get blown out. But I'm gonna go Patriots +6.5. But Broncos Buccaneers. Bo Nix so far has been forced to pass the ball a lot. I think he's had 40 plus attempts in both week 1 and week 2. And this is a defense that has given up some passing yards so far, 242 and a half in the first 2 games. But I think their secondary will kind of come back. I don't think they're that bad in the secondary, but for Bo Nix, it is a chance to maybe get some rhythm going in this new offense, a very complicated offense. I don't know if I think I sent it to you, but Sean Payton calling in the plays, and Bo Nix is in the huddle for about 10 seconds calling the play. He's like reading the Bible almost to the offense to try to get the play in. I think it's just way too complicated, especially for a rookie quarterback. This isn't Drew Brees, who has years of experience under his belt, but they're going to be forced to pass the ball. They really have no run game, the Broncos offense. And for the Buccaneers, they've looked great through 2 weeks. They've covered the spread in 4 of their last 5 games dating back to last season. Their red zone defense, especially, has been phenomenal. We saw last week against the Lions. They forced them to go 1 for 6 in the red zone. I can kind of see that trend continuing, holding the Broncos to field goals, and I trust this Buccaneers offense. They've got 2 phenomenal weapons, and Baker has looked great so far this season. So I'm going to go Buccaneers -6.5.
Okay, moving on here to Bears at Colts. Bears have been like I said, the worst passing team in the league so far. I talked a lot about the Bears earlier, but regardless, the Bears O line being so bad is going to hurt Caleb tremendously. Luckily for them, DeForest Buckner is going on the IR, which sucks for the Colts. The Bears have not been able to run the ball great at all this year, but the Colts have been the worst run defense in the league by a wide margin so far. They should, in theory, be able to run all over a Bucknerless Colts team, but this O line is so bad. I am just not convinced that they're going to be able to run over a Bucknerless Colts team, even though they've been so bad to start the year. Bears defense has had a great start, and they should be a good unit all year. I think they definitely could give Richardson and the Colts offense some troubles. AR has looked up and down, reckless and extraordinary at different times this year. You never know what you're getting, but who knows what we'll see here from him. I pray that the Colts can find the run game early in this one and lean on it. The Bears are a hard team to run against, but teams have had decent success so far early in the year running on them. We saw the Colts have a lot of success on offense when they leaned on JT. I hope that they could do that this game. The Colts have lost 2 close games while giving up a shit ton of rush yards. The Bears O line is so bad that I just can't imagine they're going to get as torched as they've gotten torched against Green Bay and Houston. This kind of seems like a trap line with the Colts being favorites in this one, and I'm going to take the Colts at home -1.
Yeah, very interesting game here. These are 2 teams that have underperformed so far this season. Bears rushing attack, like you said, only 77.5 rushing yards and 99 passing yards so far through the season per game for the Bears. Their offense has been horrendous, but luckily for them, their defense has been very good and has won them a game almost basically by themselves. They're giving up only 277 total yards per game, which is 8th in the NFL so far. Their defense might have enough to win this game for them. This is a chance for the Bears offense to find rhythm against a defense that has been underperforming greatly, very bad against the run. They're so bad against the run that they haven't been able to show how bad they are against the pass because that is the weakness of this Colts defense is their secondary. The game's in Indy. If the running continues, I really hope that they get almost booed off the field. But 237 yards per game rushing so far against the Colts. Their defense just atrocious. Only 163 yards per game against the pass so far, but that's because teams simply don't have to pass the ball against the Colts to win. The time of possession is like 80 to 40 in favor of the opposing team to the Colts. It's been very bad. EJ Speed, Colts linebacker, who's been very bad so far this season, said that if the offense can get ahead early, it will help the defense maybe stop the run. It's crazy considering when you watch the game, Packers get the ball first and they go on about a 6-minute drive where they just run the ball down the Colts' throat. Then they get the ball back, and what do? They run the ball down the throat. So if the team gets the ball first, the Colts really have no chance, according to EJ Speed, I guess. this team is already putting too much pressure on Anthony Richardson to kind of play superhero ball and win them games as the youngest quarterback in the NFL, only 5 career starts. The defense needs to step up. Hopefully, we get Josh Downs back this week. He's been missing the first 2 weeks. I think he can be the guy Anthony Richardson can rely on heavily, especially underneath or on short yardage, maybe third down situations. This is a very good Bears defense that they're going to go up against. It's going to be a tough one. Anthony Richardson, you've seen him throw a couple picks here early in the season. He might throw another one or two. People are panicking for a guy who's basically a rookie making rookie mistakes. They really don't let quarterbacks develop anymore. If you're not C.J. Stroud as a rookie or Patrick Mahomes in his first season, you're looked at like not a bust, but you get all these doubts. I mean, Richardson's comparisons his entire career have been like a Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who took time to develop in the NFL. They weren't great the rookie season, but I think it's just going to have to continue getting the reps in. This is a game against a good defense, so it'll be interesting to see what they do if he's more mobile in this game or if he's going to pass more. I don't know. They need to get the run game going and not just take Jonathan Taylor out of the fourth quarter like they did in the last one, but they need Josh Downs to play, and Julian Blackman as well is also questionable. So you really need those two guys to play to help the run game in the secondary. But with no DeForest Buckner, there's his first game he's ever missed as a Colt in his like 4 or 5 years here. So, and only the second game of his career that he's gonna miss. But high ankle sprain. I'm gonna go. I mean, maybe I think the Colts are gonna lose this game, but there's absolutely no way I would ever bet the Bears +1 in this game. So I'm gonna go with Colts -1, no matter what. Anthony Richardson, just hoping he has a big game and maybe the Colts defense finds something out.
Okay, moving on here to Giants at Browns. Browns offense has struggled so far in the run game they have struggled so far, but their no run game is a huge part of it. Deshaun has not been great, as we know, but if he doesn't have a run game to lean on, he's going to be in trouble. Hopefully for them, they can get Nick Chubb back at some point in this season and get that run game going, but they don't have it right now, and they have a great O-line, so I'm hoping that at some point they can figure that out. Giants secondary has came to play so far, but they have just been run all over. I think we finally see the Browns have some success in the run game here. Giants' biggest strength really has been their pass rush so far, but I just don't expect that to be an impact play here with a great Browns offensive line. The Giants offense has struggled so far, despite playing one of their 2 games against a horrible defense in the Commanders. Their offense still has not been great. I just don't really see how Daniel Jones and the Giants manufacture drives and put together points in this one. We think we should see a shit ton of punts from them. I could see this game even having a defensive touchdown from the Browns. I just think it's a writing on the wall that Daniel Jones is going to throw at least a pick or two in this one, and they're going to fumble at least once. I think the Giants can stay in games versus bad defensive teams like we saw with them last week against the Commanders, but the Browns are a bad matchup for them overall. They're not going to ever perform well against great defensive teams, and for that reason, I'm going to go with Cleveland -6 at home.
Yeah, the Browns defense, they weren't phenomenal week 1 against the Cowboys, but they recovered this week and were dominant again against the Jaguars. Their offense looked better this week as well. Maybe they're starting to find a rhythm. They might get Njoku back, which could be huge, considering it looked like he was going to possibly go on IR, but maybe only misses a week with that ankle sprain. They were able to pass the ball, though. Jerry Jeudy was solid. Amari Cooper hasn't really got going. As long as Deshaun Watson doesn't lose them this game or have any crazy turnovers, I really don't see how the Giants score on this Browns defense. We saw Malik Neighbors have a huge second game, so good for him. Hopefully that can continue, but I really think this Browns defense is going to completely shut out Daniel Jones. He's going to be seeing ghosts and struggling for most, if not the entire game. Um, Defensively, this Giants team was supposed to be pretty solid, but so far they've been giving up 368.5 yards per game. Not great. So I think the Browns offense is going to do enough, and I don't trust the Giants to even. I would be shocked if they put up more than 10, 13 points in this game. So I got Browns -6.
Okay, moving on here to a very weird game. Chargers at Steelers, 2 teams that are 2-0 that maybe we didn't expect to be 2-0 to start the year. Chargers are going to have to throw the ball at times in this one. The Steelers defense is just so good, especially in the run. The thing about not letting Herbert really air it out in the first 2 games early and just leaning on the run, which I think they should do. I think that is the recipe for success. I've been very adamant about that, but when you play against a team that you can't run the ball all over, you're forcing a guy who hasn't thrown it yet so far this year a ton to really air it out. Herbert's going to have to air it out in this game, and I don't know if he's ready for that. Chargers defense has showed out early, but they continue to play bad offensive teams. They played the Raiders, who are not great. They played the Panthers, who are obviously horrible. They are going to regress at some point in this year. In the year, I expect. I mean, they're playing another bad offensive team here in the Steelers, so they're going to be good on the stat sheet early on. But Fields and the Steelers need to put together some touchdown drives to win in this one. I hope for them that they can, but early on they've just been getting in field goal range, letting Boss do the rest, and leaning on their defense. I think this is going to be a very, very close game, but I think the Chargers offense really just struggles in this one mightily, and the Steelers are at home. So give me the Steelers -1.5 and moving to 3-0.
Yeah, this is one of the tougher ones to pick. Very close. Chargers, they've been able to run the ball against the teams that they've played. The Raiders, Panthers, they've looked very good, but those two teams aren't good defensively in those situations at all. Both defenses have been phenomenal. Chargers defense is giving up only 6.5 points per game against the Panthers and Raiders offense. And the Steelers defense has only given up 8 points per game. They've played the Falcons and the Broncos. So really, especially with how rusty you could say Kirk Cousins was going into those games, a couple offenses that haven't been phenomenal. The Steelers have only scored one touchdown so far this season. I expect Justin Fields probably to continue starting. I would assume Russell Wilson might be ready to go at this point, but with Justin Fields being 2-0, you really don't want to take him out. These are just two very great teams. There are only 5 teams in the NFL that are averaging less than 135 passing yards per game through 2 weeks. Both the Chargers and the Steelers are on that list. But one stat I saw was that Justin Herbert is 18-0 when his defense gives up under 20 points. I can see that continuing, and I think this game is going to be very, very close. So I'm just going to go with the underdog. I'll go with Chargers +1.5, but I think this game's going to be close, and I could see it going either way.
Okay, moving on here to another 2-0 matchup, Texans at Vikings. Both teams have come out of the gate hot on both ends of the ball. Despite having a solid defensive start, though, Minnesota has not been great in the pass defense, which is something that you really, really need when you're playing against a guy like CJ Stroud and the Texans. Stroud didn't look phenomenal on Sunday Night Football, but the Bears defense is so good that you can excuse him for that. He looked good going against that defense when you put it in perspective, and I think he's going to have more success here against Minnesota. Texans run defense has come out of the gate really, really good. If they forced Arnold to have to do it all in this one, they could be in a great spot. The Vikings couldn't really run the ball last week against the 49ers, and they won because their defense was able to step up. I don't think they're going to run it very well in this one, and I don't think their defense is going to be able to step up enough to shut down the Texans. The Vikings need to find a way to run the ball to win this game. I don't think that's out of the question. I don't think the Texans have an extraordinary run defense, but they've been good so far, and the Vikings need to find a way to get Aaron Jones going in this one. If he is playing, is he playing?
I think so.
He is? Okay. Um, I just think this is going to be a very, very close game. If the line moves to 3, I might switch my pick over to Minnesota, but for now, I'm going to take the Texans as it sits at 2.5.
Yeah, only 2.5. Stephon Diggs in his return to Minnesota. He has played Minnesota, but not in the state of Minnesota. Last time he played them in Buffalo, he had 12 catches, 128 yards, but he's no longer the alpha receiver. It seems like it's Nico Collins. It's also a Danielle Hunter little revenge game for him going against the Vikings here. 126 yards per game for Nico Collins. I think he gets a chance to kind of extend that. Brian Flores' defense have been tough for teams to really show, especially early in the season, and you don't see them very often. This Vikings team beat up on the 49ers last week in a kind of a shocking upset. Sam Darnold looked pretty good. Their O-line's been very good so far this season. They had a tough test against the Niners, and now they have another tough test against the Texans. But I just trust CJ Stroud and this Houston Texas team. I think they're going to continue their hot start. So I'm going to go with Texans -2.5.
Okay, moving on here to Packers at Titans. Game 2 here from Malik Willis. Packers have been the best rushing team in the league so far, but I want to say I think those stats are a bit inflated. They just had to run the ball a shit ton against the Colts, and the Colts are susceptible giving up a ton of rushing yards. And the Eagles, that is a good team to run the ball well against, but the Eagles defense has not been special so far. So I think those stats are a little inflated. The Titans defense has come out hot to start the year, though. I think they do see success in this game against the Packers. Titans hung in there with a well-rounded Jets team last week, and that's a team that's in a much better spot than Green Bay is right now. And they hung in there and only lost that game by 7, and maybe should have been able to win that one. Titans had success because they ran the ball so well for Chicago, a team that is supposed to have this great run defense. I think they do that again against the Packers team that I do not respect their run defense really at all. I think if they can continue to run the ball, they're going to put Will Levis in great spots where he doesn't is not able to make as many mistakes as he's been making. He needs to really just learn not to shoot himself and his team in the foot. I think that will come with time with him. Titans are scrappy, and I think Green Bay's stats are inflated, so I'm gonna rock with the Titans. I think Will Levis is going to be able to make less mistakes because he's going to have to do less. Same thing with Anthony Richardson. If the Colts can lean on JT and not put all of this pressure on AR, he's not going to be able to be in the situations where he makes these mistakes. I think him well, I think he's way more talented than Will Levis at this point. I think they do have similar issues. They're both able to light it up. They're both able to do things that a lot of guys in the league can't do, but they're also still two very young quarterbacks who have made a ton of mistakes so far and continue to throw picks. Regardless, I don't think Will Levis is forced to pass as much in this game against Green Bay. I think they're able to control it at home, and I think the Titans win this one. Give me the Titans -3.
Yeah, Malik Willis gets a chance at a quick revenge game against the Tennessee Titans only a couple weeks after they get rid of him. But I do think the Packers would probably need Jordan Love to win this one. Maybe he goes, but I would really still have to doubt it. Like you said, I think their stats are also inflated. The Colts' run defense is terrible. You're running against a Titans team that they played the Bears. They were able to shut them down. But overall, that Bears game, their defense played great enough to win. Same thing against the Jets. I kind of like this Titans team as a scrappy team. If Levis doesn't have those two embarrassing turnovers where he's trying to do way too much, this team could be 2-0 right now. Their special teams have also been very bad. 2 blocked punts in 2 games. I trust their defense. I think they're going to continue offensively if they can just run the ball a little bit against this Packers team. Force this Packers team into positions where they have to make Malik Willis make plays. I can see this Titans team winning. I can see their secondary taking advantage, making the Malik Willis make a mistake or two. As long as they put the ball in Malik Willis's hands, I expect the Titans to win this game. They should know his weaknesses more than any other team in the NFL. So I'm also going to go with Titans -3.
Okay, moving on here to Eagles at Saints. This is a very tough game for me to evaluate. New Orleans has really put on a show early, but their pass defense, in my opinion, is the realest part of this team. We've seen so much from their rush offense. We've seen so much from Derek Carr in their pass offense. We've seen a lot from their run defense. Their O line has overperformed. They've had a ton of units overperform this year, and early on in the year, you can't take all of those as this is what they are. Their pass defense was great last year. They have a ton of talent. They're good so far. I can take that at face value and say they're going to have a good pass defense. They're going to have a good secondary. Everything else could be good, but it also could be flukes. We don't know yet. They did have a game against Carolina, which, although they played the Cowboys last week, which is a good team, they had a game against Carolina, and every team's going to have some inflated stats when you play them. Hurts has looked shaky passing early on. I think this New Orleans secondary is just going to give him fits. I think he's going to have a really tough time, especially without AJ Brown in this one. I think he's going to struggle mightily against the pass defense of the Saints. I think they're going to have to run the hell out of the ball with Saquon. This needs to be a big Saquon game for them. New Orleans will have a points per game regression. Obviously, they just scored 91 points in the first 2 weeks. They're going to have regression, but this is a secondary in Philly that we know you can score on. The Superdome is just such a tough place to play. The Saints O-line will continue to have to play well and block this tough Eagles front that plays well at times. I hope for their case they can. And I think if they do block well in this game, this matchup turns into a solid matchup to a great matchup for them against Philly. I think their O-line does continue to play at least solid for them and protect Derek Carr. And I'm going to continue my trend of taking favorites with the Saints.
Yeah, Saints have looked like maybe the best team in the NFL so far through 2 weeks. Like you said, they have had some nice matchups. Um, they've scored 91 points so far this season, which is fourth most in NFL history through the first 2 games of the season. And they're just the fifth team in NFL history to score 44 or more points in 3 straight games. That dates back to their game last year, their last game last year, where they scored 48. They've scored on 16 of their 21 drives so far this season, which is the highest since 2000. They have looked elite offensively. Derek Carr's looked like an MVP candidate kind of out of nowhere. We saw at the end of last season, he got very hot, and I thought maybe, it was just a fluke or it's just late in the season, but it does not seem like that's the case. He's been phenomenal. Derek Carr or Chris Olave got going last week. Rashid Shaheed has been very good. They have the weapons with Alvin Kamara performing how he has so far in the season. This team has potential to be very, very good, and I love this matchup against that Eagles secondary that we've talked about. They're giving up around 400 yards per game, which makes this maybe the worst time you could play this Saints team. That's pass offense is on fire. They blow a game late on Monday, so you have short rest going into this game anyways, going to the Superdome. They will probably not have AJ Brown still in this one, so you're missing your best offensive weapon outside of Saquon. Morale's down a little bit, and you got to kind of find a way to not get too down on yourself. But I think the Saints are going to go in there and really prove that they might be one of the top teams in the NFC with how they're playing. I don't expect Jalen Hurts to be able to pass very well on the Saints secondary, and it's going to have to be a lot of Saquon. And I think the Saints just are able to outscore them and win the game at home. So I got Saints -3 as well.
Okay, moving on here to the first 4 o'clock game, and we talked about this right before we started recording. I didn't realize there's five this week. There's five 4 o'clock
There's
games
five
this
4 o'clock
week.
games this week. So
Yeah,
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so seven
that
12 o'clock
just
games.
makes no sense. You asked me before we started recording if I would rather have two Monday night games, which sucks, or 10 noon games, which also sucks. I think I'd rather have the two Monday night games. I think I just hate the 10 noon games. It's so hard to follow, but I hate 4 or 5 4 o'clock games. It doesn't make any sense why you have to stack the 4 o'clock window if you already have two Monday night games.
Yeah.
It like you have games to lose. Why would you not? You went 10 noon games last week. What's stopping you from going 8-4 and you could still have your two Monday night games you want? That makes no sense.
That would that wouldn't be ideal because I don't like the that many Monday night games. I would prefer
I'm saying if you had to have two
I
Monday
prefer
night
giving me a
games,
Friday night game, honestly, at this point. I don't know.
I mean, I'd
There's
rather
just
have that
so
than two
many.
Monday night games. I'd rather have that too, for sure. But I mean, I don't understand why if you were cool with doing 10 last week, why you are forcing yourself to like you could do 8-4 if you really want to do your two, because they always do the two at some point in the year, at least once. I don't know why you can't just do one Thursday night game, 8 noon games, 4 4 o'clock games,
Yeah.
Sunday night and two Mondays. I don't
If you're gonna
understand.
do two Mondays, that's ideal.
I just don't understand why you have to do your two of your three. Their three problems are overloading Monday, overloading the first slate, and too many games in the 4 o'clock slate. There's no reason you ever have to do two of those. I
Yeah.
understand one, but there's no reason you ever have to do two.
It's a primetime game. I don't want to have to like split my vision on a primetime game
Right,
between two different games.
right. It take you lose focus on both games instead of knowing the primetime games like the back of your hand, like we all do because we all watch every snap of
Yeah.
them. Now you have two games where it's like I watched them, but I was going back and forth. It is what it is. But nothing we can do about it. Moving on here to our first of five 4 o'clock games. Panthers at Raiders. I guess this is one maybe you don't gotta watch. Maybe it's only four
Yeah.
games in
That's
the
why they
slate.
put it here.
But Raiders are the biggest favorites. Maybe they will be all year, to be honest. They're sitting at 5.5 point favorites right now. Raiders have not run the ball well at all so far, but I think they're going to find success here. Most teams are going to be able to get right here against the Panthers. We saw the Chargers run all over them last week. Raiders defense in the secondary has been good to start the year, but they are questionable on paper. Let's see if Andy Dalton figures it out. They have Andy Dalton, the quarterback now for the Panthers. I don't believe we knew. Oh, we didn't. Yeah. When we recorded on Sunday night for the Monday episode recapping week one, we talked about the potential of benching Bryce Young, and I went on a whole spiel of why they shouldn't. And then, like, less than 24 hours later,
Yeah.
they decided they are. So I think that's a horrible decision. I've already really given my thoughts on it before it happened, but I just think that just doesn't make any sense to give up on him after 18 games. But that's just me. Andy Dalton, they don't have any film on him for this year, at least with the Panthers. So I could see him having some decent offensive success. I'm not going to see if Andy Dalton goes out there and has decent success against the Raiders defense that has a ton of question marks and he doesn't have any film. No one really expected him to be the starter and they go out and have a good game, I'm not going to be like, oh, this Panthers team they're not that horrible. It's all Bryce Young's fault. I won't think that at all. I think it's very circumstantial. I think we can easily see Andy Dalton have a great game here and then next couple weeks really start to fade off and be worse than Bryce Young. So I could definitely see that. I do not like taking the Raiders as such big favorites, especially with the fact that Andy Dalton doesn't have any film this year. I think he's going to have more success than Bryce Young did early on, especially against a bad Raiders defense. But I just refuse to bet on Carolina. I cannot stomach betting on Carolina. So for that reason, I'm going to continue my trend and take another favorite, even though that's bit me in the ass the entire year so far.
Yeah, I mean, it got us bad last week. But I feel the same way about this game. They've been historically bad so far this season. Bryce Young benched. We talked about that in the last episode. I also don't think that's the right decision, but maybe they're just trying to give him a chance to kind of watch the game and see what's going on and maybe put him back in there in a couple weeks and hope that he's just kind of more knowledgeable and more calm in the pocket. But at the same time, he might just not be athletic enough to be able to compete against some of these elite talents. I mean, he's the same height as Kyler Murray. Maybe he's not as elusive as Kyler. Kyler, he can get away from almost any defensive lineman. He's so quick. Bryce Young doesn't have that luxury of being able to do that. But to the game, Panthers offense, I also think they might not look that bad this week under Andy Dalton. I think they will be better, maybe put up more points. They've scored only 13 points in 2 games, but they've given up 73 as well. And that's why I can't stomach rooting for or betting on the Panthers 5.5 because even if their offense scores more, their defense has still been very, very bad, and I expect that to continue. The Raiders are coming off of a win against the Raiders are coming off a win against the Ravens last week in a game where you have maybe a high, so maybe you overlook this game and the Panthers are able to come in there and steal or at least cover the game. But I think Antonio Pierce will have the team ready to go. You're going against a team that isn't good on offense, but their defense is just terrible as well. This is a game where I look at it and I think it's going to be kind of low scoring still, but I just don't like the Panthers no matter what. I can't bet on the Panthers. I'm gonna go Raiders 5.5.
Okay, moving on here to the Dolphins at Seahawks. Tua is officially on IR, and Huntley has been picked up from the practice squad. We'll see. Maybe he gets a start. I think that would be very interesting to see him in the Miami offense. The Dolphins' pass defense has been really, really good to start the year. Their defense as a whole has been really good. I think that's very convincing, regardless if they have Tua or not. They have a ton of talent on offense, and their defense has been great so far. So it's a good situation for whatever backup quarterback gets to take it here. But the backup quarterback situation just sucks for Miami. They have so much talent, and they get a week, or sorry, I should say, although their quarterback situation does suck with their backups being between what's that dude? I can't think of the dude's name.
Skylar Thompson?
Skylar Thompson, yeah. They have Thompson and Huntley. Thompson's been there for a while, so maybe he's the guy because he has so much experience being with this group. But I think they would be more electric if they got Huntley in there and they get a week to prepare with a new quarterback and a great offense. I think they're going to be at least okay. The Seahawks will be forced to run the ball here, though. They haven't run it well, especially if they have no K9. They're going to really, really struggle, and they're going to have to run the ball to be in this game and to win this one. The Seahawks have been shaky early on in the year on both ends. Seattle has started the year so far, giving up a ton of yards on the ground. That sets Miami and A-Chain up to have a good run game, and I think that's just going to open it up for whoever it is, Skylar Thompson or Huntley. I think they're going to be in a good spot, and I think Miami shows some fight in this one, and I think they cover 4.5. So Miami
Yeah.
plus 4.5.
Yeah. Computer just completely froze. Dolphins defense is struggling as well, though. They're allowing 24 points per game, but it is still early. You're going against a Bills team last week that just kind of dominates you. Very good in the run in that game. The Dolphins have 118 yards per game on 4.5 attempts. This is two teams the Seahawks defense in the past has been pretty good so far. They are missing Kenneth Walker. If he's able to go, I think that could help them, especially in the run game when you get your best running back back. Geno Smith's been solid so far. He's really started to develop a connection with Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that can continue. DK Metcalf, this Dolphins secondary has not been good so far this season. The Patriots, they were very successful in the run. So, like you said, I think Achane is going to have to go and have a big game if the Dolphins want a chance to win. but the Seahawks defense is second highest in pass rush pressure through the first 2 weeks. And if Skylar Thompson's there, I don't like him to really do much against the Seahawks defense that surprisingly has been very good at getting pressure. Mike McDonald has done a good job. They're going to have to run the ball very successfully. And if they don't, I don't know if they can stay in it, but they have a lot of weapons. If they can just get the ball out quick, I think Mike McDaniel will have them getting the ball out quick, have them running. And as much as I kind of want to pick the Seahawks -4.5, I am going to go with Dolphins +4.5. I think Mike McDaniel, geez, is going to kind of a wild coaching name matchup,
Yeah,
but
honestly,
just,
really. I don't know. Have we ever had a coaching matchup where their first like 7 letters of their name are the same?
yeah, it's
I don't
really
know.
it's tough.
And kind of the last few too. So
Mike Mc, I can't even, I'm just going to stop even saying their names. I'm just going to start calling them by their coach, but I'm gonna go with Dolphins +4.5. I think their coach is gonna have a good scheme for him to get them going.
all right, moving on here to 49ers at Rams. The Rams are the most injured team in the league right now, and their O line is killing them. Stafford, though, is a wildly talented quarterback, and despite last week, I think he is capable of doing it all himself. We know he is. He just needs to be the one to stay healthy. Rams have struggled early on in this year running the ball, but they played against some great run defenses, playing against the Lions and then the Cardinals, who I think are going to be a solid run defense as well. Although we do not know for sure what we're going to see from them as a unit. The Lions, we do know, are a great run defense, so that is part of the reason they've struggled so far. 49ers are now down CMC and Debo, and we saw what happened to them last time they were in this spot. They really struggled last year in that few week stretch when they didn't have CMC and Debo. I think that could very, very, very much hurt Brock Purdy and this team. San Francisco secondary is not off to a great start, though. Their run defense has been great to start the year, but their secondary is off to a pretty bad start. McVay killed all of the 49ers -7.5 betters last year in this game, kicking that field goal down 10 for no reason, really. Um, or was it not? I don't remember what it was. No, they were down 7, maybe indicate the field. I don't remember what it was, but the Rams are 5-2 versus the 49ers at home at +7.5. I think this is too big of a spread for the 49ers with so many question marks on their team. I'm gonna take the Rams +7.5 in this one, despite being so injured.
Both teams have a great deal of injuries that they are going through. No Debo or CMC for the Niners, no Cup or Puka for the Rams. It's the Rams' home opener this season. Uh, Good for them. Their home opener will probably consist of about 80% 49er fans. We saw last time these two teams played, the stadium just looked red. They will get their left tackle back, Alaric Jackson, after a 2-game suspension, so that is good for them in that case. But they have a lot of injuries. Their defense is giving up 197 yards per game on the ground. I think the 49ers will want to feed Jordan Mason early and often, and I don't know if the Rams will be able to stop it or not. 49ers have won 9 of the last 11 matchups between these two teams, and right now they're averaging 141 yards per game rushing. I think they're going to be able to run the ball still, even if Brock Purdy doesn't have all of his weapons. Maybe Jawan Jennings gets going. They also get Tulanoa Hufanga back, hopefully this week, to help their defense. That could be very good for them. So I'm going to go with 49ers -7, and maybe they can get back going offensively after a rough game last week.
Okay, moving on here to Lions at Cardinals. The Lions desperately need a bounce back after a tough loss to Tampa Bay at home last week, but this is a very, very tough matchup for them here. Lions have passed for a ton of yards early, but Goff has thrown 3 picks, so that has been a problem for them. Goff needs to be able to be more calm in the pocket. He looks like he's anxious in there. He needs to just kind of chill out, take his reads, not focus. Goff's problem, and I think it's a gift and a curse. He is the type of guy that he will take his checkdowns if they're there, especially if there's nothing downfield. He's not afraid to take his checkdowns, but he gets in a mode where when he's taking his checkdowns, and we saw it against Tampa Bay, it was the perfect example. He gets in a mode where he's taking his checkdowns, there's nothing downfield, and then you get to a point where you have a 3rd and 9, a 4th and 7, where you need to throw it down the field, and he's just in the mode of nothing's there, throw it to my checkdown. And when he gets in that checkdown mode, he realizes that he can't just throw checkdowns all game, and that's when he has issues where he gets under pressure and he throws one deep and it gets picked off. he cannot get into that mode, I think he's going to have a lot more success here in this one. Arizona has found much of their success offensively on the ground early on. I don't think they're going to have that success against a great Lions front outside of getting some Kyler Murray rushing yards. I don't think they're going to be able to run it well with the running backs between the tackles. The Lions should be able to shut that down. Kyler has been getting pressured early on. Lions pass rush should continue to find success as they've had for the first 2 weeks. Kyler has gotten sacked 5 times. He got sacked 4 times in week one. I think the Lions are going to be able to put up some sort of number like that. Cardinals have been stopping the run versus Buffalo and the Rams. If they can stop the run versus Detroit, they're going to be in a great spot going forward. That will prove them as a team that can stop the run, and that is a truly just invaluable asset in the NFL right now, is being able to stop the run. We're going to truly see in their first real test this week against the Lions. I expect the Lions, though, to run the ball significantly more this week. Goff threw it 55 times last week. I don't think that's going to happen again. Arizona's defense has been susceptible to the pass. The Lions need Goff to rebound, and I think he does in this one. Give me the Lions minus 2.5 on the road.
Yeah, Lions coming off of a disappointing offensive performance versus the Bucks. They were very bad in the red zone. You wanted to get more points than you got. They are 5-1 as road. They were 5-1 as road favorites last season. They are that in this one. Their secondary struggled last week, but they get a chance to bounce back against a wide receiver room that isn't the best overall. They are going against a very mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray. I remember you saying that the one thing the Lions kind of struggle with is a mobile quarterback. Is that still the case?
It's a brand new defense that's looked really good through 2 weeks, and they haven't played a mobile quarterback yet. So I didn't want to go out and be like they suck versus mobile quarterbacks because it's a different defense, but we're gonna find out quick.
Yeah, this is the game for us to find out. The Lions' run game has been very good. Cardinals' run defense has been better, but it's going to be very interesting. I think this ball is going to be forced into Kyler's hands a lot. And so far, he's been very good with that. He obviously had the perfect passer rating last week. These teams do have a mutual opponent so far. The Cardinals were able to kill the Rams. The Lions played them pretty close, but there was a lot of different things going on. Opening game of the season, a lot of stuff going on. I think this is going
Lions
to
played
be
them
a
at their healthiest. Don't forget.
yeah. They played them with a quarter or one possession of Puka.
Yeah,
That's a
played more
uh,
than that, didn't he?
now he didn't play much.
I thought he played
Maybe
more
a quarter.
possession. They had Cooper Cup though.
They did have Cooper Cup, and Cooper Cup was
They had
looking
parts of their O
phenomenal.
lines early on. Of
Yeah,
their O line early on.
the poor Rams, man, just
Yeah.
absolute. They're a hospital team right now, unfortunately. But
Mm-hmm.
I am gonna go. Cardinals' run defense has been very good so far, giving up only 91.5 yards per game. I think that's what the Lions are gonna want to do. This is a tough one to pick. I'm gonna go with the Lions. I think they just know that they have to have a bounce back week. Dan Campbell. I do think it's close, so no matter what, the spread only 2.5. I guess it's pretty close already. So I'll go with Lions minus 2.5.
Okay, and hold on, I wanted to find this really quickly, so give me a second. Trying to find the last time the Lions lost 2 games in a row. They didn't lose any. They didn't lose 2 games ago. 2 games in a row at any point last season. I'm assuming the last time, yeah,
I
the last time they lost 2 games in a row was when they were 1-6 to start the year in 2022. So
um,
it's been about with
year and a
25,
half.
20, 25-ish games. They got
Wow.
one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus 19 from last year or 20 from last year. So it's been 30 straight games not losing 2 in a row. So they're on a
Records are
hot
meant to be
streak.
broken, though.
They are. Well, it's not a record, I don't think, but
For
I
the
guess
Lions, it might be. I don't
it's a
know.
modern record for the Lions for sure. But moving on here too, Ravens at Cowboys, both high caliber teams coming off of really bad losses in week 2. Once again, the Cowboys offense will not be great until they can find a lick of a run game. They haven't had that in over a year now. Baltimore also has been the best run defending team in the league to start the year. That's a significant strength for them at this point, and I think that's something they can really lean on against a team that can't really run the ball at all. Baltimore has struggled mightily in the past defensive game though to start the year. That's where the Cowboys thrive. So I think the lopsidedness between the Cowboys run offense and the Baltimore run defense does cancel itself out with how bad the Baltimore secondary has been to start the year and how great the Cowboys have been over the past couple years passing the ball. I was worried about the Saints O line versus the Cowboys last week, and the Saints O line ended up doing fine. But I do worry again about the Ravens O line this week. They have not been a great unit to start the year at all. Dallas has been giving up some rush yards early on in the year. The Ravens may be able to finally find some success between the tackles. The Ravens started running it a little bit more outside the tackles last week with Derrick Henry towards the end of the game. I think maybe that will help them if they can start doing that more. And at the end of the day, this is a weird line with the Ravens being 0-2 and favorites in Dallas. Are they still 1 point favorites in this one?
1.5 now.
They're 1.5 point favorites. It's a weird line. Feels like a trap to take the Cowboys, but I'm going to trust that. I when I envision in my head what's more likely, John Harbaugh 0-3 or Mike McCarthy 1-2. Mike McCarthy 1-2 is significantly more realistic in my mind. So for that reason, even though I don't think they probably should be favorites in this game, I'm gonna go with Baltimore minus 1.5.
Yeah, Ravens blew that 10-point lead in the fourth last year. That's their fourth loss after leading by double digits in the fourth quarter since 2022. That ties the Bears for the most in that span. Not a team you really want to be there with. 168 yards per game rushing so far, leads the NFL. The Ravens are one of the better rushing teams. They have been for a long time, but this Cowboys defense has given up 141.5 yards per game in the run so far. So that's a chance for the Ravens to really dominate there. Cowboys are going to pass the ball a million times this game with the Ravens pass defense being so bad, like you had mentioned. Um, Dak Prescott might throw the ball 70 times in this game, but there's really one stat, which is the only stat I needed to look at for me to make my decision on this game. And after looking at it, I mean, Lamar Jackson against the NFC. It's that
Yep.
simple. 20 versus 1, 20 and 1 versus the conference as the starter. I mean, that says all it needs to. 65% completion, 33 to 8 touchdown interception ratio. I just trust Lamar against the NFC. That's an easy bet for me. I'm going to take Ravens minus 1.5.
Alrighty, moving on here to Sunday Night Football. Chiefs at Falcons. KC has not been great in the yards department defensively so far. They've given up a ton of yards rushing and passing early on in the year. Isaiah Pacheco is going to IR for them. Steele will probably become their starter with Piron as the backup if I were to assume. This hurts them very, very badly. Pacheco is a super talented running back who gets you so many extra yards after getting hit. You're not going to be able to expect that from some of their backups. Atlanta has been really, really good in the secondary so far. I don't think Mahomes is going to have an easy game here. I think he's going to struggle. Atlanta seemed to figure it out a bit on offense. That's a great sign for them figuring that out on Monday Night Football towards the end of the game, but they were not phenomenal for the entire game itself. They did punt it a lot. Atlanta should have some success in the passing game in this one against Kansas City, though. I think the Kansas City defense this year is going to end up being a lot worse than it was last year. Last year they were stellar, but we've already seen early on against, granted, two great teams on the offensive end in the Bengals and the Ravens. I still think we're going to see them struggle at points this year. I'm so torn on this one with a very interesting line of KC minus 3.5 at on the road against Atlanta, but I'm going to bet on Kirk not being good in back-to-back primetime games, and I'm going to take Kansas City minus 3.5. I did actually like Atlanta plus 3.5 at first, and then I'm like, you know what, this is going to be. I bet against him in primetime last week. If I bet on him, I guarantee they'd get killed. So I'm going to bet on KC minus 3.5.
You said it, Isaiah Pacheco out for a while with a fractured fibula. They did sign former Chief running back Kareem Hunt to the practice squad, so maybe he'll be ready to go by the time they play. I don't know if he'll get the starting nod over Carson Steele or not, but this is a very interesting game. I think the Chiefs are going to be blitzing a lot. We've seen Spags do that a lot, blitzing the quarterbacks, try to get Kirk Cousins to have to move a little bit. He has not looked mobile at all so far this season. Obviously, he's coming off of the Achilles tear, so that is part of the reason, and the other part of the reason is that he's just simply not athletic. But Chiefs middle of the pack and run defense that could be bad going against Bijan Robinson, the Falcons team that's going to want to run the ball a lot. And the Falcons offensive line bounced back last week. They didn't perform very good against the Steelers, but against the Eagles, they were able to kind of bully them, move them a little bit, and Bijan had a great game. And if they run the ball well in this one, I think they could stay in it, keep the game close at least. One of the keys to beating Patrick Mahomes has always been to control the time of possession. have the ball way more than he has it, and I think that could happen in this one. The Falcons defense is good. This game's in Atlanta, prime time. I can see this Falcons team really wanting to be motivated to win this one. Mahomes, he's been good this year. I wouldn't say he's been great. He hasn't thrown the ball downfield too much. He's been throwing a lot behind the sticks and just short yardage with teams playing him deep. I can see this kind of being a slow game where the Falcons are able to stay in it again and maybe they get another chance to do what they did against the Eagles and go for a game-winning drive. I'm not sure if the Falcons will win this game, but I think they'll keep it close. And I'm going to bet on primetime Kirk Cousins again. I did last week. I'll do it again. I'll take Falcons plus 3.5.
Okay, moving on to the first of our two Monday night games. Jaguars at Bills. The Bills' success will come in games where they can run the ball this year. I mentioned earlier there's a lot of teams that need to be able to run the ball. The Bills are definitely one of them. Jacksonville has been solid defensively to start the year, especially in the run game. We'll see if that can continue from them. We've said if that can be great, that's going to put this team in a position to win some games and definitely be a competitive team, although they are 0-2 to start the year. Played against a 2-0 Bills team. Trevor Lawrence and the Jags offense have been bad so far, but they have played two good defenses in the Browns and the Dolphins. I think they will find some success here against the Bills. Against a weak secondary, I think we could see Trevor Lawrence have his first good game of the year. I think we see a refreshing good game from him. I think he gets his weapons involved. I think Brian Thomas has a big game against the secondary. Buffalo's run defense also has not been spectacular either, despite being in a shootout game in the first one. They have not been good. Jacksonville can run the ball. If Jacksonville can run the ball, they open up so much downfield. The Bills' run defense is definitely concerning for me because they were in a game against the Cardinals week one where there's 40 some points. You don't expect to get ran all over in a game like that. Then they're in a game week 2 weeks ago, or last week, I mean, excuse me, on Thursday Night Football where they're playing the Dolphins and the Dolphins are down by a million. They have to pass the ball, and the Bills still get pretty much ran. I don't want to say they got ran all over, but they were not efficient in that game. I think the Jags are going to be able to run the ball this game. I think they're going to have a good game on the ground, setting up Trevor Lawrence to have a good game. I think we have an offensive game for the Jags here. I just personally look at these two teams, and despite being 2-0 for the Bills and 0-2 for the Jags, I do not think the Jags are 5.5 points worse than the Bills, regardless of where the game is, especially if it's not a cold weather game in Buffalo. I think there's a chance for the Jags to compete in this one. I think the Bills win, but give me the Jags plus 5.5. I think it's too big of a spread.
It is a pretty big spread in this one. Josh Allen and the Bills offense has been pretty good so far this season. They have not been turning the ball over. We saw in week 2 they were able to get the run game going with James Cook. I think that can continue. I think they'll be able to pass on this Jags secondary, which has been very bad against the pass. They've been good against the run. But they let Deshaun Watson kind of show out a little bit last week. That does scare me for him. This game did happen last year in London. The Jags played their second home game in London, and they did beat the Bills 25-20. But I trust this Bills team more now than I do then. They continue to look better and better every week in this newer offense. I think they're going to try to get the ball to James Cook a little bit, but I think Josh Allen overall is just going to outplay Trevor Lawrence, and he continues to show how good he is, and maybe delivers another MVP performance against a secondary that he could be able to carve up. So I'm going to go with Bills -5.
Okay. I'm going to move on here to the final game of the week on the preview. Commanders at Bengals, the second Monday night game. I know this is a great matchup for the Bengals, but 7.5 points is a little scary. Bengals got better in the past game last week against Kansas City, and they are playing a horrible secondary here in the Commanders. Arguably, this Commanders game might be their best matchup of the year. Washington's run defense also hasn't been great. Cincinnati has to run the ball better in this one. I'm so concerned about their run game. They have to be able to find some success against a really bad defense. Cincinnati has been great so far in the secondary. They had a huge pick last week on Mahomes. This should give Daniel some trouble in his first primetime game. The lights are going to be bright. They're going on the road in a tough environment in Cincy, and they're going to go against a defense that's playing well. The Bengals are the more talented team, they're the more experienced team. As much as I think that they should not be this big of a favorite in this game or at all, really, it's just too good of a matchup to pass up for Burrow, and I think they have a great game. I'm going to take the Bengals as favorites at -7.5.
The Commanders' defense has been just as bad as since hiring Dan Quinn as it was before. They're dead last in EPA allowed per game. Their defense, the Bengals the Bengals will be the best defense that the Commanders have played so far this season with Jane Daniels. Last week we saw he did not score a touchdown against the Giants in that game, and I don't trust that Giants defense at all. I think this is just a great matchup for the Bengals to really get going. They're 0-2. I think they finally get in the win column no matter what. 7.5 is a lot of points. Commanders defense is bad. Jaden Daniels offensively for the Commanders hasn't really pushed the ball downfield yet. They've been solid on the run with Brian Robinson and Daniels, but only 4.4 air yards per attempt so far for Jaden Daniels. I think this is a chance for the Bengals offense to get going. T. Higgins could return this week, and they could be at full strength with him and Jamar Chase. And Mike Gesicki has been solid at tight end for them so far this season. Their defense has been okay, but they have had some tough matchups. They've only given up one pass play over 20 yards this season, so the Commanders are going to have to probably dink and dunk their way down the field. They were abysmal in week 1. They bounced back in week 2 against the Chiefs. Hopefully, they don't think this is just a given going against the Commanders. They're going to have to run the ball a little bit. I agree. They do pass at the third highest rate, though, in the NFL, and they only average 3.8 yards per carry, so they got to figure that out. But this is their best chance to have a blowout game. They need to have it for just confidence as a whole in this offense and defense. So I think they're going to get up early and be able to just continue to pass on this poor defense and try to establish a run game.
Who did you take in the Bills game? I
I
didn't
take
catch that.
Bills -5.
Okay. All right. So moving on here to our best bets. I took a couple over-unders last week, and that worked out horribly for me. So I'm going to avoid all over-unders this week. I'm going to start us off taking the Titans -3 against Green Bay as my first best bet. I just think the Titans are going to be able to run the ball really well here against Green Bay. They're going to be able to control the game. Malik Willis going back into an environment where I'm sure, are going to give him a little bit of hell. The Titans defense has been great to start the year. I don't think the Packers are going to be able to do what they did to the Colts to most teams, and especially I don't think they're going to be able to do it to the Titans. So give me the Titans -3.
For my first best bet, I'm going to go with Browns -6. I don't trust the Giants to really be able to score at all. And you've seen their defense struggle a little bit in this game. Maybe Deshaun Watson can have a great game on offense. I don't expect that to happen, but I think their defense will shut the Giants down. They won't be able to score, and I think they can easily cover 6 points. So Browns -6.
Okay, my next one here, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers -6.5 against the Broncos. I think the Bucks are just a significantly better team. I think they have a coaching advantage that maybe if you said a couple years ago, oh, Todd Bowles is a better coach than John Payton, he is at this very moment. And I think that's going to be a big advantage for them. I think we see this Buccaneers team have some success on the ground, which is huge for them. And we know Baker is just on a heater right now. They're going to pass all over this Broncos team. And their defense, I think they should have Vita Vea. Hopefully, maybe the line moves a little bit if they don't have Vita Vea. But regardless, I'm going to take the Bucks -6.5 here. I think they blow out the Broncos in Tampa.
For my second best bet, I am going to go Ravens -1.5 against the Cowboys. I know they're 0-2. Maybe you shouldn't take them, but I just trust Lamar Jackson against the NFC. I don't know what it is, but every time he plays them, just usually dominates, and the game is over pretty quickly. It is a new year, but I expect that trend to continue. Lamar has a great game and reminds people of how great he is. Ravens -1.5.
Okay, my last best bet here is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars +5.5 against the Bills. I just really think the Jags are going to be able to compete in this game. I think that this line is way too big because of the fact of their records being 2-0 and 0-2. But I think they match up pretty well against a pretty weak Buffalo defense, in my opinion. And I think the Jags are going to be able to find some momentum from the success they've had defensively in the first 2 weeks and be able to give Josh Allen and the Bills some troubles and enough to at least compete in this game. And I think they have a shot to win it outright, too. So give me Jacksonville +5.5 as my final best bet.
I'm deciding between two. I'll go with Bengals -7.5. I don't trust the Commanders defense to really be able to stop them. I think Joe Burrow is going to have a great game. And offensively, if they have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think they're going to want to make a statement of how good their offense can be. The only way I see the Commanders covering is if they're able to come back late and get a backdoor cover. But I'm going to go with Bengals -7.5 as my third best bet.
What's actually crazy is I had like a little ranking here of the ones I wanted to get, and I had Titans -3 as my first one, Bucks -6.5 as my second one, Jags +5.5 as my third one, and then my next three were Ravens -1.5, Browns -6, and Bengals -7.5. So
Well,
that's pretty crazy.
we got our six best bets here.
Yeah, regardless. But anyways, that will about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've made it this far. We will be back on Monday next week to give you a full recap of all these games that we just discussed, give our analysis on how we think each team did, and give our outlook on them looking forward. Until then, though, hit all the links in our description for Spotify, TikTok, and all that good stuff. And we will see everybody in the next one.